Alright, you join me here for an interesting perspective, something a little bit different. I thought I'll take you guys along for a little nighttime drive with the new 2024 Porsche Taycan. I have the car for a couple of days and I basically need to get some shots of it. So what I'm gonna do tonight is head to Daikoku parking area, park up the car there. Hopefully there are some clear spaces to use and grab some pictures, have some fun with the car. It has a really interesting bluish gray color which should pop under the lights of the convenience store there, so hopefully we get a bit of space to park it up. And of course, being electric, we can use the chargers there. So we are just about to jump on the Tycan, which is the expressway that connects the southern area of Tokyo here to Yokohama. So I've been spending a couple of days with this car, and I have to say I'm quite impressed at how it's generally improved in every area, design included. We'll take a look at that, of course, when we take the pictures of Daikoku. But driving wise, I'm always impressed at how Porsche manages to engineer these electric cars. They really do feel truly like a Porsche. You know, anything from the tactile things right down to the steering feel, the way the pedals are weighted and react. It's just a very well put together car. You wouldn't even know it was electric if it, you know, wasn't so quiet and so responsive at low speeds. The low end grunt, the torque is so immediate. You know, we'll have to give you a little demo here. I have to slow down, but basically you just punch it and it goes. And we're actually in normal mode here. There are 4 different modes. Starting from range, as you can see, it comes up on a secondary display that flips into action once you activate the drive mode knob here under the steering wheel. The normal mode, which is, I guess, for everyday driving, just pretty much using most of the car's capabilities. And then once you start getting into sport, the suspension stiffens up. Of course, these cars ride on air suspension, and the throttle response gets a little bit more instant. The steering weights up a little bit, and then of course a fully fledged Sport Plus. It actually engages the auxiliary sounds here. Let's see if we can show you guys. So it says electric sport sound here, so basically it adds a little bit of more acoustic feedback into the cabin when you floor it. Sounds like a spaceship. And of course you can actually turn it off if it annoys you, which is good. I would actually love to hear what this car feels like, or sounds like rather, with everything turned off, because at low speeds it pretty much comes back into action to warn pedestrians that there are electric cars behind. Of course, these things are very quiet, so if you're in a back street and there's pedestrians around, they need to hear a car coming. But that said, in Sports Plus, the car lowers down, the suspension firm up, the steering gets nice and weighted. It's really nice and stiff off center, and it has this immediate response and return as well. When you go through the corners, it's like the car has a lot of caster and returns naturally into center position. Of course, this is a fully electric rack. It even steers for you when you engage the cruise control. It's I guess AD2, autonomous drive level 2, so you do have to touch the steering wheel most of the time, but you can actually let go and it will steer for you. You have the display here, very much like a Tesla, and until it starts screaming at you, you can just let it cruise and do its thing, and it will maintain the lane. So there you go. So it says please take over the steering. If you don't do so, it will actually start flashing red. So give it a second. That's when it gets really angry with you. But once you touch it, it goes away. So you can kind of make sure you're in the line here. And since we're cruising here, quietly heading down to Yokohama, I really want to kind of, you know, dive into the fact that these cars are getting so good. And I'm not against electric cars per se. It's just I think battery technology hasn't really reached what it should be to actually be a viable option. That said, it's probably actually the charging network that needs to catch up. The batteries is pretty much getting there. I picked up this car the other day from Porsche, Japan, at 100% charge, and it was giving me 620 kilometers of range to empty. The battery is now at 72 and it's giving me 350. Although if I go back to the range setting, it actually goes up to 401. So I reckon, like, driving normally, you probably have a good 450, 500 kilometer potential range. If you do drive like an idiot, which is pretty much what I do, because, you know, these things are so addictive when it comes to that pedal response. So you always want to feel the instant torque and acceleration and literally just scare every passenger you take for a ride. Then of course it's going to drop. But I mean, they're just so well engineered. Aside from the weight, I mean, they do feel very, very heavy through the corners, and especially on the brakes when you're trying to hold them down from, like, you know, considerable speed. You really do feel that weight coming into play. But, you know, compared to, say, a Tesla, it's so well put together. It has that Porsche quality finish. The fit and finish is amazing. The quality of materials are kind of plain, but very high quality. There's not much happening. It's all laid out through these 4 main monitors here. Everything is touchscreen. It's a little bit complicated. It doesn't have much logic, at least from my perspective. They could have done things a little bit better, especially on the center console screen. The actual main dash screen is actually pretty well laid out. Easy to understand, all the information you would ever need. But for some reason, I don't know, there's like very little regeneration compared to a Tesla, which literally like hits the brakes on you. If you select regeneration and then back off, like, it does slow down a little bit more, but not in a crazy way. I guess it feels more natural. I guess they're trying to go for a more, you know, ICE engine feeling rather than having that immediate grabby regeneration that comes into play. But aside from that, just the fit and finish, quality of materials, the driving feel, it just makes it feel like a real car, unlike a Tesla, which has that kind of, I don't know, like a gadget type feel. It feels like an appliance almost. So I think Porsche have really pushed the EV envelope to a point that it really does make a lot of sense to have cars like this. And you know, especially the cheaper options, the entry-level Macan, which of course is EV only for the time being. They have announced that ICE engines are going to happen at some point. But you know, if you really want a car that feels very undifferent from your usual kind of ICE car, then Porsche really does it very, very well. So we actually took this car out last night in central Tokyo. We went to some nice kind of busy lit up areas to get some nice images of the car. You know, the first thing when you drive this in Tokyo is the size. This is a very large car. It's very wide. We had a bit of issues going through some of the narrower streets, but it's probably more suited to, you know, larger countries like, you know, Germany, obviously, US. It does feel a little bit too big for Japan. That said, it is a very comfortable car to be in. Packaging, honestly, could have been a little bit better. For such a large car, there's not much rear seat room. If you look here at the back, you can't really tell, but we'll show you in the pictures. I mean, my kids were riding back there yesterday, and they did say it was pretty tight. So if you do have a family and intend to use a car of this caliber, probably the Sport Turismo, the station wagon version that looks like a shooting brake. At least that gives you a little bit more luggage space with a hatch. But yeah, just keep in mind these things are very big, very heavy, and packaging, yeah, not so big as the exterior would suggest. And I do have an issue, which I'll show you once we get to Daikoku PA, with the doors. They're really, really short, and it actually makes getting in and out pretty difficult. You always end up brushing your rear end against the B-pillar, and the actual door handle actuation feels very unnatural. I'm not sure why Porsche would have engineered that into such a flagship model for their brand, but you know, maybe it's just me being overly critical, but you know, this is what I do. So something that if you do go and check out the new Tycan, this is a 2024 updated model. Have a look at the door handles, see if you like them, because I almost would say they're getting a little bit annoying. So as we're going through the toll gate here, perfect chance to display that immense torque. As soon as you floor it, it just goes
390 yen,
and it shifts into second gear. Once you really give it full throttle, it drops down to first and then goes on to second. If you do use the car, you know, without going too crazy, it's always in second gear. But for that extra off-the-line acceleration, it does dip down into first. And it's quite interesting feeling a gear change on an electric car. I actually like that a lot. It gives it a little bit more of a mechanical feel. It feels like the car's actually doing something more than just relying on the motors. And it kind of reminds me of the Porsche Cayenne e-turbo I once drove. Actually, in E mode, like electric mode, it would shift through the actual gears of the dual clutch transmission, which made it really interesting, very unique way to approach a hybrid driveline. So we're just heading into the very heart of Yokohama here, and soon enough you will see some really nice scenery. So while there are slightly shorter routes to Daikoku parking area, I do love taking this kind of more scenic route through the very heart of Yokohama. This is Minato Mirai. Lots of cool tall buildings here, makes it look very futuristic. Nissan headquarters is right here on our left. I'll just point it out to you when we get to it. And it just has that kind of video game vibe. It's not as, you know, overly congested as Tokyo. You can actually enjoy driving through here. And Nissan's right here. And the rest of the neighborhood is pretty much just as built up. I think every time I come here they've put up a new building. We're still about 5 minutes away from Daikoku, so just enjoy the drive. Alright, so here I am at Daikoku, parked up in front of Lawson. We're going to grab some pictures here. I just wanted to do a little walk around of the Tycan, especially from the front. You can really tell how the car has been very slightly redesigned at the front. This entry-level version has a slightly redesigned front bumper. You can actually see the redesign better on some of the other models like the 4 and the Tycan Turbo S, and I think it just flows so much better. And like I was saying, the color of this car actually came in, I don't know, I like it. It's kind of like a slate gray, but with some blue accents. It is a big car. It is definitely a massive car for Japan, but that said, for some reason, I don't know, they haven't really packaged it well. I noticed the same thing, of course, with the first generation of the car. One thing I didn't notice last time is just the way the handles like operate. It's like there's no like grip under the handle, so you often like slide when you're trying to open it. And then once you do open the door, the seat slides so far back to facilitate entry and exit. But it actually ends up doing the opposite, because it sits pretty much right behind the B-pillar, right? So when you're trying to get in, you have to get your rear end to clear the B-pillar, which makes it really difficult to get in, but even more difficult to come out. And the doors are very short. And like I mentioned, space in the back, it is what it is. The seat is now pretty much as far back as it goes, so don't I think that's the legroom you're gonna get. You're probably gonna move forward a good 10-15 centimeters once it slides. But yeah, I think they could have definitely done a little bit better with the space. That said, I like it. It's simple, it's very modern, very futuristic design, and it just fits in a cool modern city like Tokyo and Yokohama, and of course right here at Daikoku. So one reason I actually did come down to Daikoku PA is because, of course, electric car needs electric charger. So these are the Japanese EV charger right outside Lawson. I haven't used these ones yet. These are the very new ones, so I'm pretty much kind of used to using the older, I think they go up to about 75 kilowatt an hour quick chargers that you'll find in parking areas. Of course, with electric cars, everything's heavy, it's big. That goes right down to the wheel and tire setup. This is the base Tycan, and it actually rides on gigantic 20-inch wheels, massive sidewall on these things, and of course behind that there's a massive braking setup, not that you can see much, but yeah, it is actually the smallest setup that they do. If you see the brake combo caliper disc on a Taycan S, it looks enormous. One cool little touch that Porsche does with its charge ports is basically you swipe and you have the DC charger plug on one side, and if you go over to the passenger side you do the same, but you have the AC port on this side. You see what I mean? That looks sick, giving you the full Japanese combini treatment here with Lawson in the back. Right, well, I hope you enjoyed this short little video about the 2024 Taycan. Of course, this is the base model. An amazing car that really allows you to kind of have a little taste of the future. I think the progression is quick. I think battery technology is improving. As we see here, even in Japan, the charging network is improving. It's just becoming, you know, a little bit easier to kind of live with. And I think we shouldn't knock electric cars. You know, yes, they will never replace a sports car, but for your day-to-day driving, I think these cars make so much sense, especially in big cities like Tokyo, and especially like countries like Japan that have plenty of self-made electricity. Of course, most of it is nuclear. I'm sure there will be some people that have something to say about that, but you know, it keeps energy costs at a minimum compared to some of the costs that people pay around the world, which are significant. Japan still manages to keep those prices very, very low. So it makes having these cars even more, you know, viable. That said, I think we just have to wait a little bit longer to see how these cars improve and become true replacements for what, you know, we've come to understand as being a car, ICE powered, of course. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you check back soon for more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit me up on Patreon, and check out dinodc.co for all the merch. Thanks again, and check back soon for more.